Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is James continuing on with this Balsa USA smoothie build. It's been a little bit slow building lately. I've had a couple other things I had to get done. One of them was working with that Sato engine on that Hangar 9. You saw those playlists I had on that. I wanted to get that taken care of, so I kept kind of concentrating on that. But now I am back to building on the smoothie here. And in this video, I'm going to be putting on the tail section pieces. And let me see, so we're in the manual, we're on this step right here. I guess it's tail group section, obviously, and putting on the horizontal stabilizer, this guy right here, and also the fin. Vertical stabilizer is going to go on here like this. And it's got these other little pieces that are actually going to have to be carved to kind of make everything blend together. So that's going to be doing in this video, and we'll see how far along I get. I do have to put on the wing, because what's going to happen is I'm going to be measuring, once the wing's installed, I'm going to be measuring to make sure that it's even on both sides back to the tips of this elevator. So I'm going to be measuring back from the wing to these locations. And that's how you're going to that's how you're going to assure that it is, close as possible to being aligned. And then I also have to make sure that it doesn't, it's not going to be tilted. And there's kind of two processes here. One of them is making measurements, and the other one is eyeballing it. And eyeballing it is actually pretty important. And you can make a lot of measurements and make sure everything's, you can measure everything and think that everything's great, and then glue it all together, and then stand back and look at it and go, oh my gosh, something went wrong. So it's really good to, when you're doing this type of thing, stand back, take your time, make sure things look straight and look even before you do that final gluing. And one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add, these are two light kind of pieces of balsa stock. I'm going to put two little strips back in here, because I think this is kind of thin in here, and I want to just increase sort of the surface area for which I'm going to be gluing. So I'm going to put a little piece kind of like in here, and then also another one up on that side. Let's flip this over. All right, so I have a little bit of a cramped quarters back here trying to get this thing kind of in the camera view. So anyhow, so I got the wing on there, obviously, and I'm going to look down at it and take a look. So I leveled the plane out, and I do have now everything's rounded off, obviously, on the top, but there is this little kind of flat original block area right here that is flat. And I leveled the plane based on that surface right there, as you can see. Now, I'll come back here, and I want to just check sort of this surface that's going to end up supporting the horizontal stabilizer. So I'm just going to put this on here gently. And you can see that it's pretty level here too. So that gives me some kind of confidence that at least the fuselage is sort of built straight. And hopefully, when you're putting these wood planes together, they're not going to be perfect. But hopefully things sort of match, things kind of make sense, and things sort of line up as you build it, and there's not like a big problem. It's not like this thing was, tilting off to one side or something. So I'm starting out in a good spot. Let me put the elevator on here. And I do have that center line marked on here, and I have a center line sort of marked on those bulkheads. And just to kind of get me close. So hopefully, put that right about there in the center. Now when I look down on this, sight down the back of this, I'm going to have to stand back. But sighting down, hopefully I can look at this and it looks like it's pretty straight. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stand back a little further. Okay, so that horizontal stabilizer looks like it's pretty good. Again, I'll check it a little further off camera. But that's going to be sort of like my starting point. Now, I need to measure. What I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from, I'm going to pick a point, and I'm going to measure from the wingtip area to the stabilizer area. And hopefully the distance from the wing to here is going to match from this side, you know, the same thing on this side. And if it doesn't, and I'm just going to go ahead and move this thing back and forth to get it to work. Let's put this on here. And again, this is assuming, you know, when I'm putting the level on here, this is assuming that the airframe is built, you know, straight and true. And again, you don't know for sure, so it takes a little bit of time. You have to be patient and stand back and look at it and make sure everything looks good before you do that final gluing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put a very light clamp on here just to hold this thing down. Oops, I already moved it, but it's okay. Just very gently. All right, so I just have a light measuring tape, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick an arbitrary point on the wingtip, and I'm going to measure it to basically this seam that I have between the tip and this main body of the elevator. I'm going to just measure to that seam right there, and that's going to be consistent on both sides. So I'm going to drop this on right on that little corner back there on the wingtip, and I look down on this and I can see it's 23 3/4 of an inch to that spot right there. Now I'll pop it on this side, and this one is about 23 5/8. Okay, so what does that tell me? Well, it tells me, so it's shorter, it's a shorter distance from here to that wingtip than it is from this wingtip to here. Now it's only off by 1/8 of an inch. So the thing to think about is, you know, is this plane built perfectly? I know it's not. So probably for practical purposes, I'm off by 1/8 of an inch. It's probably fine. But what I can do, or what I will do, is I just have to move this thing ever so slightly, because basically I just have to rotate this just a little bit and kind of make up for that 1/8 of an inch. So it means I'm off by 1/8 of an inch. It means that each side has to just kind of rotate about a 1/16 of an inch, and that'll be taken up on both sides then to kind of get rid of that 1/8 inch sort of discrepancy. So I'm just going to give it a little gentle, something like that. That may have been too much. We'll see. So that's 23. Still 23 3/4. So I'm going to move it just a little bit more. All right, so I checked it and double checked it. It's 23 11/16 to this spot, and on this side also. So again, you know, that's, in my book, that's pretty good. So what I'll do is I'm gonna make sure this is nice and sturdy on here, and I'm gonna take the plane and I'm gonna set it somewhere where I can look down on it, because I'm looking at it from this this perspective. I want to look down on top of the plane and still make sure that things look right. before I go ahead and make any kind of final decisions on when to glue it. All right, so I'm standing pretty far back, and I'm going to be taking a good look at this. And then once I think it looks pretty good, I'll put it back on the bench, and we'll line it up one last time and then glue it on. Okay, well, finally, after looking at it from every which way I could, I concluded that I've got this thing pretty much lined up as good as I can. And again, you know, if it's a 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch, you know, you can probably try to work those out, but really within that tolerance, I'm kind of happy with that. And things look like it lines up when I stand back from a distance. So I'm going to go ahead and go for it like this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip it over. Hopefully I don't tweak anything while I do this. Put it down. Oops. Okay. And then I'm going to grab my pencil. I'm just going to go ahead and mark now. I'm going to trace where this is. Really good. This side and this side over here, it's kind of in the dark. That way. I'm going to take it off, put the glue on it, and then I can line it back up with those lines right there. Alright, so in addition to tracing the line here, I also put a couple little tick marks, as you can see, one here and one here on both sides. And that's just in case, again, if this thing gets moved, maybe if I moved it by accident this way or that way, I'll have the tick marks to kind of keep me lined up. I mean, it does butt up against the fuselage right here, so I'm not too worried about it, but these are kind of things you can do to hopefully keep things lined up. Let's pull this off of here. And there's our little marks and our lines. Hopefully you can kind of see that. But like I said, I'm going to put these, before I glue it on, I'm going to add these little guys right in here to give me a little more bonding area. So I'm going to do this with some CA. And then when I put the stabilizer on, I'm going to use epoxy. Okay, so I can do this just like this. Now I know I get comments, and I understand completely. Again, the more kind of reinforcing this kind of thing that goes on, you're adding weight to the plane. I do get that, and I take it seriously. But I also know that sometimes kits, and a lot of times ARFs, this is not an ARF obviously, this is a just a regular building kit, they do benefit from some reinforcement. Just kind of have to use your best judgment. And when you take a look at the build as you're doing it, if you see something looks a little bit weak or something, you may consider adding a little bit of reinforcement. Okay. Now that'll just give me a more bonding area between the sides up here, because this is kind of thin in here. So I'm going to use this, my Bob Smith 30-minute epoxy, and I'm going to mix some of this up. I keep this in the refrigerator. I have a little mini fridge where I kind of keep my glues and things. I don't keep food in it, I just keep this kind of stuff in there. Alright, so let me work this stuff out of here, and then I'll mix it up. Now for the tricky part, sort of flip it over. It's going to be kind of messy, but see my lines there. Then I'm going to clamp it upside down. When I mean like this, I'm going to clamp it on here like this, so that epoxy kind of runs down on the inside. It will kind of drip down and kind of accumulate actually at that contact. So, okay, pop this on here. May have to get a couple more, but we'll see. Let's get this first one on, and I can start making some final adjustments here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and check, make sure everything's lined up, and then come back. As you can see, I put the wing back on. I thought I should do that just so I can measure things and check things as I was kind of putting those clamps on. Because even though you draw the lines and such, that gets you close again, but you can be off a little bit. And again, you know, I've mentioned this, I guess, several times now, and I'll stop kind of harping on it. But, you know, if you're off by, to me, if you're off by a 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch, somewhere in there, that's probably within a reasonable amount of tolerance for something like this. Because, you know, the wing, I know the wing isn't built, you know, perfectly straight, and I know that the fuselage, I mean, it's just the nature of the beast when you're building a kit like this. So, to me, I'm really close, and I'm happy with this. So, I'm going to let this cure, and then come back, and we'll install the fin for the rudder, and that'll be our next step, and then also these little blocks. So cool. All right, we'll be back once that cures up. We'll come back and continue on.